Last year, I made a timeline video about the interconnected music videos from the Japanese musical artist Eve. It got more views than I was expecting, and I have some regrets. Sure, a few of the placements were wrong, but mostly what I mean is that I think the way I went about explaining things last time kinda did a disservice to the music itself, as well as the animations, since it didn't let you all see how it evolved in order of release. In a way, that's a whole timeline in and of itself. Getting to see the music videos connect over time is a lot of fun, and I want to share that experience with you instead of just handing you the end result and calling it a day. That's why this time, instead of going in timeline order from the start, I'll be discussing each work in release order and then putting them into a timeline that I'll be constructing as I go along. A few things will be swapped around slightly for the sake of making this video a little more coherent, but generally I'll be going approximately in the order things were released. If you do just want the timeline though and find my explanations and analysis boring or overwhelming, you can skip to the timestamp above. I don't have any Subway Surfers footage or Family Guy clips in the corners, but I'm sure you can figure something out. Now then, the very first Eve music video was released 10 years ago in 2016, and it's called Demon Dance Tokyo. For some reason, this is the only one that isn't in the official playlist, but it does connect to later entries, so I'll still go over it. This is the first of many to be animated by the artist Ma, which will be an important thing to note later. This song is about a shy boy who doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere, preferring to hide behind his camera while his two friends have fun. He has big dreams, like dating a supermodel and being famous, but he doesn't feel like it suits him. He also seems to have some dark thoughts, which are represented by his alternate form, a white alligator. The existence of this alternate form will make more sense later on, but for now just think of it as a sort of spirit form. He seems to want to consume his friends, and at one point is even shown chomping one of them to bits. I imagine this fantasy is a result of him feeling inferior to them, which I guess makes sense when they have names and he doesn't. Poor guy. There's also probably a romantic element to it too, as the lyrics paint him as what kids these days I believe would refer to as a simp. I'll become your prime minister, swearing to God I'll protect the country called you. Unlike most of what comes after, this music video doesn't have much of a character arc to it. It's more of a snapshot of this character's life. That makes it hard to place in a timeline, since there aren't any changes from the start to the end that we can use to help. But we'll get some clues later on. Besides, this is the first entry, so there's literally nowhere to put it but the start at the moment. The next music video to release was Literary Nonsense, also by Ma. This one is where the style and world of the main Eve universe really starts to be established. I sort of think of Demon Dance Tokyo as a test pilot and Literary Nonsense as a first official episode, so to speak. There are two main characters here. One is Bun, a book-smart human boy who represses his emotions. The other is Hitotsume, an extremely important figure in the Eve universe, and one who was the face of the Eve brand for a long time. Actually, does a single eye count as a face? Hitotsume and the other little creatures dancing around are what's known as Zingai, a quirky way of saying Jingai, which is Japanese for non-human. What these things are will be explained in later media, but for now the pattern we'll be seeing throughout most of these music videos is that each human has a bond with a specific Zingai, for better or for worse. In this instance, whether it's better or worse isn't so black and white, which is ironic considering the visuals. Bun lives his life in fear of acting out, except for during his midday meetings with Hitotsume, who encourages him to let out his emotions and, quote, become an idiot. Hitotsume and Bun also seem to have conflicting philosophies regarding the concept of identity. Bun thinks his meetings with Hitotsume are turning him into someone who, quote, isn't me, while Hitotsume rejects the idea of a concept of self altogether, which Bun takes offense to. Things take a dark turn when Hitotsume pulls out Bun's guts and shoves them into his brain along with some books. This is a very literal way to show Hitotsume filling an impressionable kid's head with ideas and forcing him to think with his guts. Bun seems to see this as magic that has rebirthed him, but will also wear off and wither away. It seems reminiscent of Cinderella, with her wish coming true but then fading away at midnight, and that's no coincidence. Bun repeatedly says referencing the fairy godmother's magic spell from the Cinderella movie. It's a particularly neat reference too, because it's an example of the real-world concept of literary nonsense. And the characters fit so well with the concept, with Bun being the literary and Hitotsume being the nonsense. Hitotsume would even later be referred to as the Nonsense Eye via Eve's Twitter handle. But enough gushing about how clever this video is. How does this fit into the timeline? Well, we only have one other music video, but we can at least say the two are connected because the Demon Dance Tokyo Boy makes a few cameos. There's nothing to say which comes first yet, emphasis on yet, so I'll put them together for the time being. The next music video is The Secret About That Girl, but it doesn't really fit into the universe outside of getting one reference later on. I might talk about it another day, because it's not like it has nothing of value to discuss in a general sense. But for now we're gonna skip it because it being part of the main universe would cause quite a few problems, and it wouldn't tie into any overarching story or themes of said universe anyway. So the actual next music video we'll be talking about is Dramaturgy, which yet again is animated by Ma. This one has the same iconic visual style as Literary Nonsense, and for good reason, because it goes all in on the theme of identity from that one, and it also shares the same antagonist, Hitotsume. Yeah, like I said, we'll be seeing a lot of this guy. In this one, he seems to have a more overtly villainous role, while in the last one it was possible to see him as just trying to help. He's moved on to his next pupil. Get it? Pupil. A boy named Kurukuru, which translates to spinning in English. Kurukuru is a mime, and the stage is his life. Like Literary Nonsense, this one is tied to a real-world ideology. Dramaturgy is the sociological idea that the whole world is like a stage, and everyone living in it is a performer, playing whatever role is required of them at any moment. At home, you play the role of a family member. At work, you play the role of an employee. At school, you play the role of a student. None of them are the real you, they're just parts you're performing. This is very much in line with Hitotsume's own philosophy of there being no real self, which he tries to impart onto Kurukuru like he did with Bon. This idea is really emotionally damaging to Kurukuru though. You see, he has nobody to perform for. If your identity is shaped around performing for others, but there are no others, then you can see how things would become problematic. The simple solution would be to get back out there in the world and have people to perform for, but Kurukuru doesn't want that. He views society as a cramped stage, and he doesn't want to go on playing parts for others until he dies. This all makes more sense when you notice one small detail. Kurukuru knew Bon and was there to witness him fall apart. For a moment, you can see a flashback to Bon being reborn, while the lyric, "We used to be so innocent, before we knew it we were typecast as monsters," plays. It's pretty reasonable for Kurukuru to not follow Hitotsume's teachings after seeing something like that. He even says, "Can't help but be suspicious of the hand reached out to me." Sadly, Kurukuru begins to break in the same way that Bon did regardless. After swapping through so many masks looking for the right role to play, Fukuro, a Zingai that looks to be a reflection of Kurukuru, reaches to the boy's face and rips it off as if the face itself was another mask, and there's nothing but sludge behind it. Now he's stuck behind a mask forever, whether he likes it or not, and Hitotsume, seeing his work is done, leaves him behind. This is the first, but certainly not last time that we get to actually assemble this timeline. Because we see a flashback to Literary Nonsense, this one obviously takes place after. 2 down, many more to go. Next we get to explore a music video made by a new animator, Waboku. While their art style is a little different, the world in their video still aligns closely with the Ma ones, mainly in the sense that it's still a world of humans and Zingai. This is As You Like It, and it's about an unnamed boy and a Zingai named Handman who takes the form of an older version of the boy, but with a glove on his head for some reason. They're in a popular band together in what looks like the rundown remains of an old Zingai city. The boy is trying to win the heart of an unnamed girl, Just look at their names, they're a match made in heaven. The boy doesn't feel worthy of the girl, so he tries to be more like Handman. Unfortunately, this just results in the girl liking Handman instead. So he ditches that idea and goes back to being his usual self, and the girl seems pleased. I kinda get the impression they were already basically a couple from the start and he was just too stupid to realize it. This one fits really well thematically with dramaturgy. The title of the song is the same as the Shakespeare play with the famous "All the World's a Stage" monologue that encapsulates the theory of dramaturgy, and the boy puts on a mask and performs on a stage. This has no bearing on the timeline, but I still felt like bringing it up because I've never seen anyone mention it before. I won't place this one anywhere in particular yet, but there is a lot of rocket and explosion imagery here that I want you to tuck away in the back of your mind for later. Editor's note. So, as is tradition when making these things, it was immediately after finishing this entire video that something extremely useful was released. Waboku just made posts about their thought process with this music video and one other, the first of which I'll just read out here. As You Like It is a music video that represents my early career. These days, I think many creators use narratives in their music videos. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's one of the best approaches among several options. However, I wanted to create an animated music video that did something different. Instead of a busy experience where viewers have to dissect and analyze the story, my goal at the time was to create an MV that was more perceptually and instinctively fun. Of course, I still love that kind of approach today. This MV was a place where I pushed forward entirely toward that goal. The scenes and objects in the video are all suggestive, but there are no detailed explanations. For this particular MV, those details were simply unnecessary elements. What mattered most was whether it could make people feel happy without thinking. Do you think Waboku will hate me? After that is just... Oh wait, that one has no connection to anything. I'll just stop pointing out the ones that I'm not gonna talk about. After that is Outsider, another Ma one. This one confused me when I made my last timeline video, and, well, it does still confuse me, but not as much as it used to. It's about a boy named Platoon who's gone undercover alongside his Zingai partner Mochi to take down an organization that's draining the emotional energy from Zingai and funneling them into a giant robotic brain for some reason. Maybe to make this robot sing songs or something? Whatever the reason, once these emotions are released into the world again, the Zingai shed their soft, cute disguises and regain their original forms, including Mochi, who goes from a big rabbit thing to something resembling a demon. It also frees a giant dinosaur thing called Adagon, which, again, I can't explain. At the very end, after Platoon completes his job, we get a shot of Hitotsume standing next to a portrait of the video, implying that he had some sort of role in the events. Given how he's always taken the side of emotion over logic, I imagine he was on Platoon's side of the struggle. Fun fact, as far as I can find, this is the first and only time the name Zingai actually appeared in a music video's lyrics itself, and it gets translated to outside in the English translation. There are some thematic ties here to literary nonsense, with the idea of logic versus emotion coming back once again, but also two physical ties that are incredibly helpful for our timeline. First is a poster for Kurukuru's drama-free show, dated October 10th, 2023. This gives us a date for dramaturgy and tells us The Outsider takes place around the same time. Second is the presence of Adagon, the dinosaur from before. This actually isn't his first appearance. He made a very minor cameo in Demon Dance Tokyo. If Adagon was trapped until the end of Outsider, but is free in Demon Dance Tokyo, then that means we can put Demon Dance Tokyo at the end of the timeline we have so far. The music video after that is Tokyo Ghetto, Waboku's second Eve music video. This is one of my favorite of all of them. It's about a man named Seiki Otogiri who traveled to this rundown town full of Zingai out of curiosity, only to end up living a boring, monotonous life alongside the Zingai known as Janitor. Seiki seems to be depressed and pretty antisocial, unable to find a purpose to his life or sympathy for those around him. But all of that changes when he meets a girl known as, the girl. Seiki has an intense interest in this girl, and while she comes across as friendly and supportive at first, I think that's just an act. She's got this conniving expression, not just in the video itself, but also in multiple pieces of promotional art. There seems to be a power struggle going on that I believe fuels the events of the music video, and it's represented by the throne-like chair that shows up over and over again. At first, Janitor sits in it, but then Seiki takes his place and hangs Janitor on the wall. Then the girl shows Janitor a picture of himself in the chair again, at which point Janitor reclaims the throne. Eventually, we even see her give a very dangerous signal to Janitor, where she bites into one shoe in a pair and draws blood. This leads to Janitor biting Seiki's head off, seemingly killing it. The girl watches, and seems to be unhappy with this conclusion, but resigned to it, making me think she probably wanted things to go down a different way, but felt she had to let this happen. And then, at the very end, we get another Hitotsume cameo, with him sitting in the chair. Seems like once again, he was orchestrating things in some way. I have a video where I do a deeper analysis on Tokyo Ghetto, but it's outdated as it uses a lot of information from a book series that's been proven to heavily contradict the music videos themselves. So if you want bad info, make sure to check that out. Anyway, like Outsider, Tokyo Ghetto gives us actual dates to work with. The video takes place between June and November of 2020. That means that it goes somewhere before Dramaturgy and Outsider, but we don't know yet if it's before or after Literary Nonsense, so at the moment I'll put them together. Editor's Note 2. This is the other music video Woboku made a post about right after I finished this video, so I'll read that out here. All kinds of problems in the real world stand in the way of us moving forward. We want to move on, yet there are moments when we find a strange sort of comfort or happiness in just staying stagnant in one place. I interpret this song as one that captures those exact emotions. The MV's protagonist, Seiki, as a side note, I actually named him, is trapped by the memories of a girl he used to live with. He lives a stagnant life in the ghetto, occasionally running away. In the end, however, he can never escape the city. He is ultimately disposed of by the city's cleaner. This music video deals heavily with the world of the deep subconscious. While I cannot explain every single detail of the direction, please keep in mind that everything on screen represents the landscape of Seiki's inner mind. So yeah, take that as you will. I will not be addressing it going forward because, like I said, this is just an editor's note. Not sure why I'm calling it that when the editor is me, the writer and person speaking to you right now, but oh well. We've now made it to the final Ma video in this timeline, fittingly titled Last Dance, which was a massive help with this timeline. It actually gives us an order for all 5 of their music videos: Literary Nonsense, Dramaturgy, Outsider, Demon Dance Tokyo. I think this scribbled out person is the Demon Dance Tokyo boy, given the similar shirt, the fact he calls himself a disappearing boy, and the fact that his music video was the only one removed from Eve's music video playlist, and Last Dance. And I know this is specifically the timeline order because it's noticeably not the order the music videos were made. Anyway, this one is about a dancer named, fittingly, Dancer. He seems to have ties to several prior characters. The subtitles call out that he repeats lines from Bun and Platoon, and we see footage from their music videos as well as Kurukuru's. He also seems to have a hole in his heart that's associated with Hitotsume, which leads me to believe he's been heavily scarred by what happened to Bun and Kurukuru. This might be why he's in the hospital. This is also backed up by lyrics from Dancer at the beginning of the video. Everything I want granted has been taken away, leaving me distorted. With different values, that guy who I hate put on a ridiculous sneer. Deceived by elegant words, they waited, panicked and struggled, racking their brains and grasping onto greed. They fell into the abyss of ego. Ridiculous sneer sounds a lot like how Kurukuru described Hitotsume, and the others being talked about would likely be Bun and Kurukuru, who were manipulated by Hitotsume while panicking and struggling, trying to grasp onto a certain version of themselves, hence them falling into the abyss of ego. It seems like he was also an outsider from society like Kurukuru and Seiki at one point, as he's grouped together with the two of them in a tweet with the caption, "Exile from the capital, poor children." I'm not sure how that fits into anything, but I figured it was worth mentioning. Anyway, there are actually 2 different characters singing in this one according to the pronouns used in the Japanese lyrics, or something like that. I don't know the specifics because I don't speak Japanese. The second singer seems to be Dancer's dancing partner, Mika-san, who wants him to join her again. Throughout the music video, it seems like the 2 of them are slowly coming to terms with the fact that he doesn't find joy in it anymore and wants to move on. A line that comes from Mika-san, according to various translations, says, "When I looked from afar, you looked happy, but it hurts and hurts because I know everything." Thankfully, it looks like they're still able to remain on good terms by the end. Throughout the video, we see plenty of shots of the city, and it's way more advanced than it was in Demon Dance Tokyo. Just look at all these flying chunks of city. Because of that, I'm placing this at the very end of the timeline, long after everything else. We've got a 2-for-1 deal after that, with We're Still Underground and This World to You. Both are made by the same animator and follow the same characters, with the latter just being a little montage of places from the former. These music videos introduce us to the concept of 2 parallel worlds. The first is the destroyed, overgrown remains of a city, while the other is a shiny, thriving city. In the first lives an unnamed boy, and in the second lives an unnamed girl. They live parallel lives, both unfulfilled by what their respective worlds have to offer them, until the girl accidentally stumbles into the boy's world. The boy seems to have some sort of darkness within him, which the girl helps him overcome, and they sit together in peace. Until we cut to years later, and the boy is depressed in a room in the girl's world, writing songs about the place he used to live. Eve said that these 2 songs are supposed to be reminiscent of waking up from a dream, and this fact, along with some other stuff we'll talk about later, makes me think the boy's world is a sort of fantasy land, while the girl's one is the real world. In the fantasy world, there's a sign saying war is over, implying there was a war in that world. That would explain why the city has been destroyed. It's the ruins of a former society that was destroyed by war and then reclaimed by the survivors. We also see a cameo of Handman from As You Like It here, but there was one in Tokyo Ghetto too, so either he's a dimension hopper or we just have to ignore that inconsistency, because otherwise this timeline will completely break, and I've had that happen too many times already to handle rebuilding it from the ground up yet again. Seriously, there are like 20 scrapped timelines that I made before this one. On the subject of As You Like It, the next music video has a really interesting connection to it. This is Baumkuchen End, another Waboku one. And at the start, we see a shot ripped straight from As You Like It, just at a slightly different angle. That would imply that these 2 take place at exactly the same time. The 2 are also really similar plot-wise. An unnamed boy is trying to get the attention of an unnamed girl, but he's too insecure, so he goes to a group of Zingai for help. This time, though, the Zingai are actually helpful instead of just stealing the girl. Also, this giant bear Zingai destroys a section of the city, and no, that never gets addressed again. So, now our mini timeline is getting less mini. Thankfully, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to start really tying things together and answering some big questions about this world. And this next thing is not a music video. I know, I lied in the title, I'm evil. In early 2020, Eve and the artist Nuo launched a manga in the main music video universe titled Kara no Kyoku, or The Empty Memories. This manga kinda tells a story, but it's mostly a vehicle for lore dumps. The Empty Memories marks a huge change in tone for the Eve universe, and it's one I have mixed feelings on. I'm gonna be completely honest and say I think this is a pretty terrible story. I was gonna keep my bias out of the video, but screw it, this is my timeline and I'll say what I want. It turned this whole world of Zingai into something only special people are able to see, and added a shadow government that hides them from the rest of society, and hires kids to hunt down the rogue ones. It's a massive shift from the more personal stories we've been seeing, but thankfully that aspect doesn't carry over to the music videos too much. But because upcoming music videos do adhere to it, I'll give a rundown of the story and its lore dumps. The story follows Ray, a kid starting high school who wakes up one day to find he has a little creature he calls Kyuta following him around. Then he starts seeing these creatures all over the place, until Hitotsume comes along and removes his ability to see most of them, for reasons that are never explained. Later on, he gets attacked by another creature and is saved by a boy named Tobi Otogiri, who explains that these things are Zingai, which are your heart's other form, explaining why there's always a link between one human and one Zingai. And he brings his own Zingai, Baku, around to eat the evil ones. He works for a secret organization containing, among others, an intelligence personnel named Monica, a boss named Mai, and also Platoon from Outsider. He's also searching for Hitotsume for some reason, and hopes that sticking with Rei will help with that. The master of one of these evil Zingai, Yu, is targeting Rei because there's something special about Kyuta. Rei and Tobi go to fight Yu in a place called the Heart Stratum World, which is a parallel universe that Zingai come from. Rei is from a secret ancient family called the Hitohane clan that is closely tied to Zingai, and he's a chosen one who can reverse all of the deaths that happened along his journey in exchange for having them all forget his existence. He goes along with this, and he leaves his old life behind to join Tobi's Zingai hunting team. Also, the whole thing was orchestrated by this guy who works for a second secret organization called the Dream Factory that makes drugs out of human trauma, but his plans fell through. The organization may or may not be the one from Outsider that was sucking up emotional energy from Zingai, but that's neither here nor there. So, that was a lot, and you don't have to remember it all. I'll be calling out certain pieces again as they become relevant later and digging deeper into them. Anyway, there's one scene in this manga that helps us with our timeline. Bun can be seen sitting at his bench reading his newspaper, meaning this is happening around the same time as literary nonsense. This little area is getting really crowded, but the next music video will help us break it up. This one is How to Eat Life by then newcomer Mariasu, one of the most famous music videos. It spawned a sequel, a book series, and a manga of said book series. It's also heavily tied to the Empty Memories, which makes sense because the two released around the same time. This one actually focuses on Tobi Otogiri, who, if you couldn't tell by the name, is the younger brother of Seiki Otogiri from Tokyo Ghetto. In the Empty Memories, there was a quick moment where we saw a bit of Tobi's backstory. As a child, he was abandoned by his brother, and the trauma of this incident summoned Baku. How to Eat Life deals with the emotional aftermath of that, taking place sometime shortly after the Empty Memories, and also immediately after Tokyo Ghetto. The music video starts with a shot of Seiki's remains, and it seems that now that his big brother is gone, Tobi has dedicated his life to searching for Hitotsume for some reason or another. Why he's doing it is unclear, but it ultimately doesn't matter for the video itself. While Tobi is on his search through an underground city, he laments his endless struggle to fill the void within himself by eating other Zingai. It seems like it's even gotten to a point where Tobi and Baku are kinda stuck in a cycle of eating each other to stay satisfied, until a giant Zingai dragon starts wreaking havoc on the city, and they work together to eat that instead. Now, I'm gonna break my rule of going in order to skip ahead a bit, because this is one of the rare music videos to have a direct sequel, and it would be easier to talk about the two of them together. Immediately after How to Eat Life, the story continues in Fight Song, with the dragon Zingai Tobi 8 reincarnating. It turns out she was some kind of human Zingai hybrid or something who got assassinated by her fellow fight ring leaders after standing up against them, and now she's turned into a little girl. When Tobi finds her in that alley all alone after eating her previous incarnation, he's reminded of the day he was left behind by his brother, and how Baku was always there for him. So, he decides to take her in and be her big brother. Years go by with Tobi and Ryuko exploring the underground, looking for Hitotsume and avoiding civilians who want revenge against the dragon for the destruction it brought. Eventually, Ryuko is captured by Akamaku, the leader of the fight ring. It seems like despite killing her, he wants her back on the team. Tobi tries to fight the leaders to get her back, and as he struggles, Ryuko remembers how he's always been there for her and how the fight ringleaders tried to kill her, and she jumps into his rescue. Together they defeat the organization and set off for home as a family. As for where these take place, How to Eat Life is immediately after Tokyo Ghetto, so it's in 2020, and Fight Song is 3 years later, so it's in 2023. We know both are before Outsider because Mochi is still in his disguise form, and they're after the Empty Memories since Ryuko isn't around yet there, so I'm gonna put them in between literary nonsense and dramaturgy. And now for something completely different. The next music video is Mariasu's second work for Eve, Shinkai. It may seem like it's in a whole different universe, but later context clues will show that it's actually just a long, long time after everything we've seen so far. This is in the post-apocalypse fantasy world arc, something I wasn't sure was even a real thing last time around, but now I'm fully confident in. This music video is extremely similar to We're Still Underground, except with the opposite ending. Both are about a kid living in a destroyed fantasy world and a parallel kid living in a normal world. But as opposed to last time where the fantasy kid ended up in the normal world, this time the normal kid ended up in the fantasy world. This is where I'm gonna start bringing up some of that Empty Memories lore. Remember the Heart Stratum world? It's a parallel universe where Zingai come from, with one Zingai existing in the place of each human. Zingai can look like anything, and in the case of these two music videos, I believe the Zingai look just like humans. This is heavily supported by the concept art for the music video listing the two as different forms of the same girl. Also, one of the ways to get between the normal world and the Heart Stratum world in the Empty Memories is a spiral staircase, just like what we see in We're Still Underground. Judging by We're Still Underground and also Shinkai though, it seems like water can also be used as a pathway. This is a pattern we're gonna see again in the future, by the way. Oh, also, we see a cat plushie in the normal world becoming an actual cat in the fantasy one, which reminds me of Sham from Deltarune. That doesn't matter to anything, I just thought it was fun. We're going even deeper into this new arc with the next music video, Living Idly and Dreaming as If Dying. I know, it's a mouthful. I just call it Living Idly. This is another one that ties water to fantasy, and yet another one where there's a person in the normal world with a counterpart in the fantasy world. This time, though, the normal person is able to become the fantasy person in his dreams, and live in a fantasy through that. He seems to worship some sort of moon god, and he sleeps his days away until he performs a ritual that does... well, I don't really know what. There's also another character here, a moon-themed girl, but I'm not entirely sure what she represents. My best guess is that she's a dead lover of the boy, because there's a part where we see symbolism of his broken heart, and that the ritual is an attempt at ending his own life to be with her again, as we see him in a field of orange flowers with her that will be used to represent dying in a future music video. This is a particularly complicated video though, so I'm not too confident in my interpretation, to be completely honest. There are other videos you can watch if you want a more in-depth interpretation of this one in particular, but for this video's sake, let's move on. Ultramarine Hymn, the first music video by Kuka, is yet another one that takes place in this post-apocalyptic fantasy world. You can tell Eve really liked the setting at this time. This one gives us an actual year to work with, 2081. Yeah, we're really far into the future now. Apparently Hitotsume survives all the way until then, which is neat. There's a lot going on in this one, with main characters, side characters, and a multi-generational arc dating all the way back to 2021. The basic plot though is that the descendants of a group of kids from the 2020s who only have each other are trying to stop a giant magic sky whale that's wreaking havoc with the weather. And they, do that with, like, a flying broom. Yeah, okay, I guess it's not that complicated. There are just a lot of characters. I think the flying whale is the blue-haired girl's Zingai, because it looks like a plushie her grandpa gave her before she lost him. I don't have an exact spot to put this one yet, but we can group all of these together as being, like, around the 2080s-ish. Now it's time to take a break from the future arc and hop back into the original one, with Night is Faint by Zenyatta, who was locked in Eve's basement and forced to work non-stop. I really like how the animation is always perfectly in sync with the beat here. I would show you an example, but, you know, copyright restrictions. Despite the different art style, this one does in fact take place in the main universe, because our protagonist Akame has not one but 2 Zengai. What a greedy guy, save some for the rest of us. Akame is dealing with clinical depression, constantly being bothered by his first Zengai, Zukin, who embodies his will to live. The feelings of emptiness lure him to his second Zengai, Kumo, who embodies his wish for death. He's designed to be spider-like to show how he's ensnaring the moth-like Akame into his web. In the end, Zukin pulls Akame out of the trap, and Akame is able to realize he's the good guy, and that life is in fact worth living. It's a rare win for a Zengai owner, but I'm certainly not complaining. As for our timeline, there isn't much to work with here. It's completely self-contained, so it doesn't really matter where it's placed. But because of some posters on the wall, I'm gonna place it right after Dramaturgy and Outsider, just for the sake of keeping things as tidy as I can. Man, I've gotta say, it's been fun digging through these short videos for meaning. It's amazing how much can be packed into a 3-minute animation. I wonder what this next one will... Oh. So during COVID, Eve couldn't go on tour, and instead he partnered with Netflix to make an experimental hybrid of a narrative and a concert film. It blends live-action scenes of 2 high school girls, footage of Eve's performances, and animations, both new ones and ones lifted from previous music videos. Personally, I don't really think the experiment paid off, as I feel each aspect was fighting against each other rather than enhancing each other. But luckily, it's self-contained and I don't need to talk about it here. I will mention, though, that it includes Hitotsume and makes him into a transphobic dad, which I find really funny. There was a completely disconnected music video used for the credits of the movie and then posted shortly after, which is what we'll be looking at next. This is Don't Replay the Boredom by Waboku. The protagonist, Taikutsu, is addicted to watching television, and their unnamed friend has to snap them out of it. The story is straightforward, but I want to really dig into the connections to other music videos, because there are a lot of them, probably more than any other video before it. It contains multiple references to 2 of Waboku's previous works, As You Like It and Tokyo Ghetto, and even a few of Ma's videos. So, first of all, Taikutsu has one of Janitor's mechanical eyes, and their Zengai is one from the crowd at the end of Tokyo Ghetto. So clearly we're in the city from Tokyo Ghetto, How to Eat Life, and Fight Song. We also learn that Handman and the boy from As You Like It are their neighbors, and they seem to be getting along. So this must be after that music video, which must also be in the same city, unless they moved. Then, when Taikutsu watches TV, which he views as thinking of those memories, we see clips of the protagonists of the music videos for Dramaturgy, Last Dance, and Tokyo Ghetto in much better places than they were when we last saw them. Most noticeably, Seiki is alive. To me, this implies that Don't Replay the Boredom is set after everything from this arc, and Taikutsu is reminiscing on those times. Fitting for a credits video. Maybe that's why they made it that way, now that I think about it. Eve wasn't just branching out to movies at this time, though. Next, we got the start of a novel series, How to Eat Life. Can you guess which music video these are based on? What do you mean, no? They literally share a name. In my last timeline video, I relied heavily on these books to interpret the timeline. That may have been a mistake. Since then, we've gotten several more books, as well as an English translation for the first 2. And in the translation, we get the following message. Up until now, Tobi Otogiri's story has only been depicted through music videos and the manga Kara no Kyoku. After a period of in-depth planning between me and novelist Ao Jumonji, I'm pleased to announce that it is finally ready to be presented to you in the form of a single story. I believe that everyone who's listened to How to Eat Life or watched its music video has their own personal interpretation of the story it tells. I hope you'll appreciate the version you're about to read as one more interpretation. The combination of a world dreamed up by a musician and a plot devised by a novelist. So that's kind of vague. It sounds like it can be considered part of the world, but you're also free to disregard it in favor of your own interpretation of the music videos. That gave me the idea that I should incorporate them into the timeline, but point out any little contradictions if they arose. But then, Book 6 happened. Books 1 through 5 are about Toby in middle school, but in the 6th one, we have a time skip to Toby at the age of 17, which is how old he is in Fight Song. Here's the issue. The events of the How to Eat Life music video still haven't happened. And you're not gonna tell me that this Toby is the same age as this Toby. The book even says he's 170 centimeters tall, the exact height in Fight Song. We can put these two side by side and see they're obviously not the same height. There are a lot of other smaller contradictions too, but there's no point listing them when I already gave you the smoking gun. Now, to be fair, the books aren't over yet, so they could be planning some completely insane revelation that somehow makes sense of it, like time travel or Toby clones or something. And yes, the books are in fact weird enough that neither of those would surprise me all that much. Toby was like grown in a lab by an evil shadow government or something, and Seiki smuggled him out and created a nationwide cult that started overthrowing society. I'm not gonna dwell on it. Some of the earlier books are really good, but I'll let you read them on your own time if you'd like to. The next music video is Bokurano, which as of now is the last one by Waboku. It takes place in the fantasy world from We're Still Underground, with one scene at a convenience store even referencing that video. This one gives us a glimpse into what may have turned the fantasy world upside down, or at the very least took advantage of its state. A supervillain called the Mad Bomber. He has one of the guys from Bomb-Kitchen End on his team, so I guess they weren't as good-natured as they seemed. Our protagonist here is
Seijinku,
a boy who's gifted superpowers by his friend, but isn't able to match up to the Mad Bomber or the local superhero who's been protecting the city. But when his friend gets kidnapped, he realizes that he can still be heroic by using his powers to hold off the Mad Bomber's chaos, and buy the main superhero time to strike. Now, there's something strange about Bokurano. Something that doesn't quite fit with any other music video so far. Remember how I said this is in the fantasy world from We're Still Underground? Well, look at the town here. There are some Zingai, sure, but there are also quite a lot of humans. That's not normal for this world. We've seen over and over again that apart from a few outliers, the fantasy world is exclusive to Zingai. So how are there so many humans that a whole class of just them can exist? Well, there's only one possibility. The two worlds combined. How? When? I have no idea. Did Eve and Waboku even intend for this? I have no idea. But it's the only thing that makes sense, so unless it gets debunked, I'm sticking with it. It does kinda fit with Ultramarine Hymn, since in that one it seemed like the protagonist's grandparents were from the human world, but the protagonists themselves were in the fantasy world. Because of this revelation, Bokurano is gonna go right alongside Ultramarine Hymn, and both of them are gonna be placed after Living Idly, Shinkai, and We're Still Underground. After Bokurano came Flower Storm, another music video by Kuka. This one is huge for the lore of the future arc, but also really complicated, so I'm admittedly still trying to wrap my head around it. It stars Suno-chan, who seems to be a mix of human, dragon, and cat. It seems like she and her brother ended up getting separated onto two sides of a war, with her on the dragon side and him on the cat side. Also, something's going on with birds and a giant hole in the sky. I don't know what's up with that. But anyway, her friend gets hurt by the cat people, and she sets out on a revenge mission, only to learn from these memory-storing creature thingies that her grandparents started the war and her parents were against it, and then also discovers that the leader of the cat side is actually her brother. Their father's spirit helps the two reconcile, and I presume the war ends. Flower Storm is relatively easy to place into the timeline because of one helpful detail. The giant rubber duck that fell from the sky in Shinkai is here, and it's covered in plant growth. That means it's quite a long time after that one. It's probably also after Ultramarine Hymn and Bokurano, since, the giant hole in the sky. Maybe it'll be moved before or after at the end, we'll see. Now we're back to the old arc again with Insomnia, the music video that introduced me to Eve and also my #1 favorite. It's hard to tell whether that's a coincidence or not. This one is about Tobi's friend from high school, Tsuneo Fuchi. When Tsuneo was a little boy, his father would lash out at him and pour scalding hot water all over his body, and his Zing guy, Mr. Creepypasta, retaliated by killing the dad and staging it as a suicide. Tsuneo lives with this trauma for years until March 28th, 2024, the day before his 18th birthday. Sorry to break the flow, but I just wanted to say real quick that I'm really glad to get another exact date. Tsuneo tries to go out the same way as his dad was falsely believed to, but thankfully he fails. He's also an insomniac, hence the title, and when he gets too sleep-deprived, he regresses back to his childhood self, who is basically his opposite. This particular night, Mr. Creepypasta decides to be an absolute psychopath by giving kid Tsuneo a model gun and leading him out into the street to pretend to shoot people. Not only that, he also drives a truck into traffic and causes a several-car pileup. The next morning, on his birthday, now adult Tsuneo sees the event on the news, and he doesn't even realize he's the one who did it until the police show up at his door. He fights with his kid self until he comes to accept his past, at which point he embraces his kid self and takes Mr. Creepypasta's place as the one kid Tsuneo can trust. The two of them disavow Mr. Creepypasta, represented by shooting him in the eye, and they're taken to a hospital, but because they caused a public disturbance and traffic accident and are now a legal adult, he ends up in prison. Thankfully, Tobi is still there for him though, which is nice. I used to think this one took place before Fight Song, because I thought Tobi looked younger here, but I was wrong. Mr. Creepypasta gets an eye injury in this music video that's still present in everything that comes after it, but no such injury exists in Fight Song, where he has a few cameos. Because we thankfully have an exact date, we can slot this one in a few months after Dramaturgy and Outsider. And since Demon Dance Tokyo depicts summer weather, and Insomnia takes place in early spring, let's also say it's a few months before that one. Conveniently, the next one after Insomnia, called Sayonara End Roll, is a direct follow-up to it. It follows Tsuneo again, and takes place on Christmas Eve. It also released on Christmas Eve, which is cool. Tobi comes across Tsuneo outside his apartment, so he decides to help Tsuneo clean up his space and invites him over for a Christmas Eve dinner with Ryuko. After Tsuneo returns home, he feels like he's just been a burden to Tobi all day, and just in general. And he thinks that they're not close enough friends for him to be honest about how he's struggling. Also, we see that the trauma is still deeply impacting him. At one point, Tobi gets annoyed and reaches out to take Tsuneo's phone, but he flinches and covers his facial burn, and we hear the sound of scalding water for a moment, which implies he still has flashbacks to his abuse. He can't take living like this anymore, so he walks into the ocean in another attempt to do a thing that YouTube won't allow me to say. But thanks to a social media photo uploaded by Mr. Creepypasta, Tobi notices and is able to save him. Seeing that someone genuinely wants him around encourages him to keep on living, at least for another day. Then we get another music video with Tsuneo. It's called Ghost Avenue. He only gets 2 short cameo roles in the video itself, but he plays a big role in comics giving background for the story. I have a video covering this one specifically, so I'll just give a condensed version here, and if you want all the details you can click the link above. It stars 20-something-year-old Maharu Haruma. In comics posted by Mariasu, we learn that Maharu is the estranged half-brother of Tsuneo Fuchi, and they were separated in a divorce custody battle shortly after Tsuneo's birth. Maharu stayed with their mom, while Tsuneo stayed with their dad. After the events of Insomnia and Sayonara End Roll, Maharu got called in to take care of Tsuneo, and at first reluctantly agreed, but eventually grew fond of him. In the music video itself, we immediately see that Maharu is a troubled person who sleeps with strangers, takes their money, and indulges in way too much alcohol and cigarettes. Almost every night he invites a random girl to his house. On nights where he doesn't, his Zingai Lilin secretly draws blood from him in order to gain the strength to turn into a girl and spend the night with him. This human form is based on a girl Maharu had a crush on as a child, Suzuki. Maharu was a neglected kid, and Suzuki was the only one who paid him attention, at least until she got hit by a vehicle and died. What is it with Maharu's loved ones and getting hit by vehicles? At one point, Lilin discovers that Maharu is getting genuine love from his new friend group and decides to intervene. She takes a dangerous amount of blood right from Maharu's stomach and leads him out into the road, hoping for the two to be together forever in a recreation of Suzuki's death. He snaps out of it and makes his way back to his apartment, struggling to walk due to blood loss, but Lilin beats him there. Luckily, Tsuneo showed up just in time and called an ambulance, so Maharu ended up okay. He didn't seem to learn much of a lesson from the experience, though. That's the most recent music video in the present-day timeline at the time of writing. But there is one more in the future timeline that's just recently came out. It's called Wind's Anthem, and it feels like a spiritual successor to Ultramarine Hymn. That makes sense, because it's made by the same artist, and also has a cameo of the protagonists from that one. I want to give a huge shout out to this video for helping me to understand Wind's Anthem, because I couldn't for the life of me figure it out on my own. The moon has fallen to the post-apocalyptic Earth, and a civilization of magic users has colonized it. One of these magic users is Eve, yes, the Eve, who drops a magic pendant that curses a girl named Uto and a wolf named Ro to become half-human. Eve decides to stay on Earth and hide the girl from the moon cult, but the wolf gets taken and becomes one of them. Ro tries to bring Uto back to the moon, but in the end they both decide to stay on Earth. This one is at the very end of the timeline for an obvious reason. The moon fell. It's just there, in the ocean. I don't think the moon was in the ocean in any other music video. Oh, and Suno-chan and her brother are together. That helps too. So that puts this in or after 2081, and... Wait. Hold on. What is that? 2026? How? What? These two clearly aren't in their 60s in Ultramarine Hymn. Is this an ancient ticket? Is there some time travel going on? Should I just write this one off as non-canon? Sorry, but I don't have answers for this. You'll have to let me know what you think, and for this video I'll have to leave it off the timeline. Well, that sucks. But hey, we've reached the end now, and discussed every music video that I've been able to connect to each other. I mean, there are a couple here and there that have sequels to each other, but they're still self-contained in regards to the broader timeline. So now, we can finally see the completed chronological timeline from start to finish. In 2020, we have the Empty Memories, where Rei faces his destiny and joins Toby's organization, Literary Nonsense, where Bun goes crazy with Hitotsume, Tokyo Ghetto, where Seiki gets eaten by Janitor, and How to Eat Life, where Toby eats a dragon and meets Ryuko. We then jump to 2023, where Toby and Ryuko make their escape and fight song, Kurukuru sheds his face in dramaturgy, Platoon takes down a villainous group in Outsider, and Akame near-lethally washes himself in Night is Faint. In 2024, Tsuneo snaps in the middle of a city street in Insomnia. An unnamed boy dreams about eating his friends in Demon Dance Tokyo, which seems to be a common dream in this universe for some reason. And Toby saves Tsuneo from a Christmas Eve polar plunge in Sayonara End Roll. In 2025, Maharu adopts his brother and donates blood in Ghost Avenue. From here on, we don't have dates for a while, so I'll just list them without time frames. We see a fancy, futuristic Japan in Last Dance, then a fantasy world city being demolished in Bankachen End, and at the same time the events of As You Like It are taking place. Then we reminisce on past music videos and don't replay the boredom. See two selves meet in We're Still Underground and its sequel This World to You. See two selves meet in Shinkai. And see two selves meet in Living Idly. Now we're in a distant future, circa the 2080s, where the normal world and fantasy world have collided in Bokurano. A whale flies in the sky in Ultramarine Hymn, and the sun vanishes and human-animal hybrids fight in Flower Storm. Got all that? No? Well then click on the playlist and watch them in this order for yourself. If you've already seen them all, then maybe watching them in the order I picked will give you a whole new adventure out of them. And if you haven't seen them, then maybe you'll fall in love with them like I did. And let me know if you disagree with anything, since this is all still a pretty heavy work in progress. I found that there's always more to learn when it comes to these music videos, and I feel like I've still only just barely scratched the surface.